Welcome to episode 1 of the Masculinity Trap. This is the beginning of a long form series about why so many modern men feel stuck, lost, and quietly broken, even when on the surface their lives look functional. This isn't a motivational talk, this isn't a culture war, and this isn't about blaming anyone. It's about understanding the system men were dropped into, the expectations they were given, and the blueprints they never received. If you've ever felt like you were behind in life without knowing exactly why, this conversation is for you. This is the Prelude. I want to slow everything down for a moment. What we're talking about here isn't a headline, and it isn't a hot take. It's something most men feel long before they can explain it. A quiet sense that something is off. Not always dramatic, not always obvious, just a weight that shows up in the background of everyday life. You wake up, you do what you're supposed to do, you work, you handle responsibilities, you keep moving. From the outside, things look fine, but internally, there's this lingering thought. I should be further ahead by now. I should have this figured out. I shouldn't feel this confused. And that's where a lot of men get stuck. Not because they're lazy or weak, but because they can't name what's actually happening. That's what the masculinity trap is meant to describe. And the small broken branches are what most men focus on. Habits, addictions, avoidance, anxiety, coping habits. The problem is you don't fix a tree by trimming leaves. That's why so many men feel like they're fighting 10 problems at once. They fix one area and something else collapses. They stop one habit and another issue surfaces. They improve externally, but internally, things unravel. It's all connected. That doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're entangled. And naming that entanglement is a first step towards rebuilding, forward with intention. This conversation isn't about staying stuck in what went wrong. It's about understanding the structure that shaped us so responsibility becomes actionable. So before we explain any more, before we define terms, before we break down traps, I want to start somewhere honest. So you all may have an ideal about how I'm describing the masculinity trap. And by the way, my name is Ed. And before we go any further, I would like to introduce my guests that we have here. So first, this is Shar. This is Reginique. And this is Izzy.
Yep.
And Izzy is the great voice behind the Masculinity Trap theme song. So that's Izzy. So, Shar, I want to start off with you first. So, when you first heard the term Masculinity Trap, what kind of thoughts did you have?
Well, when I first heard it, I really wasn't sure, but I knew it was something that could help men. There's a lot of programs and a lot of different things like that that's out to like as a help guide or whatever, but I knew because of the name it was a focus on men, helping men, because sometimes men can be forgotten, they can be pushed aside and everything, but yes.
Okay. Reginique, when you first heard the term masculinity trap, what did you actually think?
I'm with Shar on this one. I did think it was dealing with a male perspective, helping them get out of a trap of things that they've been through in life, and to lead them out of with like a mentor, like trying to help them get up out of what they've been going through. A lot of them don't have a mentor, don't have nobody to get them out of it, or don't even know how to get out of it. They just know they leave it in their head, like they're dealing with it instead of releasing it. And this is a spot where they can release their thoughts. That's what I took.
Okay, and with you, Easy, when you first heard the term masculinity trap, where were you thinking?
What I was thinking is basically, uh, basically a show that will be explaining what is a trap for men and things that can help men overcome or break out of that quote unquote trap.
Okay. So based on what you all mentioned about your explanation or what your first thoughts about the masculinity trap, uh, how does language trigger defensiveness? So we can say like with men, they can want to keep things internal, keep things to themselves. How does like based on their outcomes or how they think their outcomes are judged, how does that tie into like the process or the blueprint they were never taught or given?
So a lot of the time, like as a man, as I see myself, it's like I wanted to stay more quiet, not so isolated, but it was like when I was going through something, I wanted to take time to understand what I was going through. And a lot of people would think, oh, he's closing himself off instead of trying to express those emotions. But sometimes you just got to be quiet and understand what you're going through so you can get the help you need. And I feel like if you keep pushing that onto somebody that they're quote unquote isolating themselves, it's gonna then make them want to isolate themselves because now they feel like they're forced to have to speak.
Okay, so for the women, how do you see like if with men if they isolate themselves or if based on what Izzy mentioned, like how do you see like the manifestation from men and how does that affect you all when men are isolated or defensive or
It makes the person unapproachable. It makes it harder for you to communicate. It makes communication hard, and it makes you now even want to like to a certain extent want to deal with it, but because you don't have no understanding because there's no communication, then you know how they're feeling. So it can go all kinds of ways, but I feel like it makes you feel like they're unapproachable. You can't kind of like an introvert.
okay.
And that's what I was going to say as well. It's like the communication isn't there. And because of that, I feel like it can bring in a barrier in a sense between the two, the man and the woman. Like she may want to say, "Hey, let's talk about this. Let's talk about that," and the man he's like, "No, I don't want to talk about it." So it's yeah, like that. No communication, lack of it. I would
Okay.
say.
So do y'all think this is like a structure, like how men are quote unquote taught how to be men, or do you think look as it more of like a character flaw with men?
It could be both. Structure, the character flaw, meaning I mean, like literally, a lot of men don't have anybody to talk to, don't have a father figure or anything like that. So they never was taught how to talk or how to communicate with others. And then it could also be, man, that would trigger off the character flaw too. Like that's just what they do. They don't know. They going by how they were raised or what they a learned behavior.
So do y'all think like if it's a learned behavior where like it's an endless cycle or loop where he was never taught and then his dad never taught him and then because his dad never taught him and his dad never taught him and it's like an endless cycle where someone has to break the cycle otherwise it just continues on and then at some point other people are affected by it, his children, you know, if he has a woman or not, his relatives, so it's like a endless cycle.
Learned generation. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, it could also be a cycle because like I don't know if you heard this phrase. It's like a lot of time when you're growing up and like you're like a younger like male between like the ages like 5 to like 10, 12, and you like start crying from like small things because at that age you're still trying to develop your own feelings and emotions. And a lot of time they'll be like, "Oh, don't cry. You don't need to cry for this." And I feel like that triggers an awareness that some men shouldn't cry or have emotions about certain situations. So that can be like a big factor in it too, from being told, "Oh, you're a man or you're a boy, not supposed to cry. You're not supposed to express that type of feeling."
Yeah, because like they say real men don't cry, real men don't do this, or real men do that. And then people are like, well, if you cry, you're not a real man. And I mean, the guys have had lost relatives and, pets or whatever. And the logic makes no sense because a man could be like, oh, I don't want to cry. My friend died, or a parent or a sibling died, or whatever. But you want to be strong in front of people because you don't want to cry. But it's like, who's going to mock you or laugh at you because you're crying because you're grieving because you lost a loved one? So the logic that some of these guys have when it comes to that is like, and another way that I look at it is that we all know how the world is. I mean, it's a place where it's just a very toxic place, and so people want to do the same thing like everyone else while knowing that how the world is like you want to be a part of a club, but the club is corrupt and all this stuff. So you're doing the same things other people are doing, but you're complaining because you get the same results. So it just doesn't make any sense. So
I mean, yeah.
And may I add that, if those emotions are suppressed for so long, there may come a time where uh, there may be a breakdown. There may be an outburst. There may be, some kind of outward um, effect or emotion or whatever because of all of that stuff has been held in. And I think a lot of men have a lot of pressure put on them because they're men. And it shouldn't be like that. Like you said, if the man wants to express his emotion because a loved one died or this happened or that happened, then he should feel, free to do that. That's not a sign of weakness by showing emotion. But
and that ties into like the tree, like the masculinity trap, the whole tree where the roots that are the addictions, the coping habits, and how it all just sprouts up and forms a tree, which leads into the different traps of the masculinity trap. And so I mentioned during the cinematic video that the trunk is basically the world that inherited, be the culture, the school environment, home environment, whatever. And so people, they don't choose the where they are. People can't choose what family they're born into, what country, what city, state, ethnicity, whatever. And so that's just like something that was pre-installed. It was just, it is what it is, and then what are you going to do with it? And so the branches of the masculinity trap again are the 12 traps of the masculinity trap. So, and then I can also say like the leaves can be the behaviors. And so if someone looks at it as like a big old tree where there's the upbringing, there's the culture, there's stuff you can't control, and then it can sprout up and form into different traps. And so the 12 traps are the masculinity trap. So I will get back and give like a brief explanation of the different traps or just detail them so that people will know or remember what they are. So basically, when I formed the ideal of the masculinity trap, I looked at, of course, 12 traps. There were six internal traps and six external traps. And in the six internal, the external could be the external manifestation of internal issues. And so we had the isolation trap, which is the first one. We had the apathy trap. We had the emotional trap. We have the spiritual or existential trap. We have the competence trap, the pleasure trap. We have and those are the six internal traps. So, and the external traps, which would be like, could be the external manifestation of internal issues, would be the economic trap, the identity trap, the misdirection trap, the pride trap, the competence trap, and what someone mentioned earlier was the fatherless. So these are, and when it comes to the traps, it's not necessarily one particular issue. I mean, these things are intertwined. And even in our society, we have like one thing that comes to mind is that someone may not be in the economic trap, but someone can have all the money in the world as they can think, but they could have emotional issues. They can have issues with pleasure, and we see this all the time with celebrities who have all the money, have bad relationships, or there's men who are get caught up in situations and then they get hosed or taken advantage of for their money or and just so that could be with pleasure and that could be with emotional, and so those two could be intertwined with that. So the traps aren't necessarily that they're rigid where someone is in one or someone is in, they could be in one, they could be in two, they could be in three, and hopefully people aren't in any because you know per, it's not about being a perfectionist. It's more so where like you try to not have a whole lot of weaknesses. So like if any of y'all watch basketball, you could think of, okay, basketball, you got to play offense, you got to play defense. You have guys who may be a specialist, shoot the 3-point ball good. There's somebody who can play inside in the paint. So very rarely do you have like someone who excels at every single thing. But if someone's a well-rounded player, then that's like the best case scenario. So even with these things, I mean, if someone is in one and they're in a deep hole, it can cause such a massive problem, even if they're no issues with the other 11. So a lot of times it's people are tied into two, three, four, five different traps. And so that's why I said that it's entanglement where it's just not one issue. It could be two, three, four, five. So based on the traps I mentioned, which trap hit you all first, or which, as far as like which trap stood out to you first, or which trap do you recognize in your own life if you wanted to mention one, or better yet, if you like people you work with, just things you read on the news, or like which trap do you think sticks out the most, or which one just came to mind first?
The
Anyone?
fatherless trap with me. It would be the fatherless trap. Not being that I didn't have a father, growing up, but just being around a lot of different men that had no father, whether they be in jail or not living or whatever the case may be, or walked away from the relationship with their mother. But a lot of times, the sin of fatherless trap, I see a lot of the traps that they kind of blend in together, like all the ones that's on there. But that's the one that hit most because of where I work too. So I'm starting to see a lot of things where you see a lot of those emotional situations and the kids is starting out at a younger age and then it's prospering to when they're older. So that's what I'm seeing out of that. There's a lot of issues. A lot of issues come in the mix of that, and it starts at that age. They start getting in trouble. They start doing things that don't they know they're not supposed to do. They're looking for love, and they don't have that dad figure, so they're lashing out on others and mothers and grandmothers or whatever it is, because it's a missing man in their lives. And like we talked about earlier, that's what's making them probably keeping it in because they don't have no father figure or a man figure, like I said, in a mentor to speak to. They don't have that comfort zone where they can go and talk to somebody. A woman really can't get to that level when it comes to a man, um, on helping them grow into who they're supposed to be. So that's the one that stood out the most to me.
Sure, easy.
The emotion one, because like, yeah, as a man, it's okay to have emotions. You know, like it's nothing that's wrong with having emotions. It's just learning how to express emotions the right way. Because like a lot of them, like I should say, people lash out. That's because they
Mhm.
have bad ways to express their emotion. But if you understand what the emotion is and how to express it the right way, that can help you go way farther in life.
Yeah, I think with anything, it's about balance because I mean, it's either like a lot of people when there's time to stand up and say something, they kind of cower down and just don't say or do anything. And then when it's time to be quiet, they're just explosive and loud. And I think that these people, there's no emotional regulation. They don't know how to flip the switch or they don't have a balance or regulation. And so even like what Reginique was saying about the fatherless, so a man could have be in that trap, and then he could be, like she said, looking for love in the wrong places, or he could be joining gangs or doing committing crimes, and then it's like, okay, he could be angered because he has nobody. He feels like no, and then some of these people, a lot of people, they look for excuses, or they play the blame game or the victim game. You know, there's a lot of victimhood where it's like, oh, I didn't have this, I didn't have that, and that's my reason, that's my excuse. And then people try to get into like whether it's nature or nurture or the lack thereof, and it's just like in my own like personal life, I would say there's nothing on this earth that I have went through, am going through, or will go through that someone else on this earth has not been through, is going through, or will go through. So like if I say like I'm not special, it means like nothing I have been through, am going through, or might go through in the future. It's nothing unique. And so, like what Easy was saying about emotional keeping things together, keeping things in, is that people need to stop looking at themselves as if they're like a special snowflake, and that they're the only ones on this earth who has been through it, or is going through, or will go through it. And if they stop looking at these issues as being so unique and so specific to them, they would kind of want to, that hopefully they will lose that victim mentality and stop making excuses, and just to get on with whatever they need to get on with. Because I mean, either people will wallow in what went wrong, or what, you know, whatever things, or they will just stand up, pick themselves up by their own bootstraps, and just move on with life, and just dig themselves out of the hole. Because I mean, it would be cool if life was like a game of Monopoly where we all started on the same square with the same amount of money. But in the real world, some people, they got a hotel on Boardwalk and a hotel on Park Place, or a couple of houses on, you know, a couple of railroads somewhere. So it's not how. So people need to just be like, okay, I started in this place, they started in that place. Am I going to use that as an excuse for all my problems or my future or whatever? So, Shar, did you have any trap that stood out to you based on the 12 that you recognize in life, society, or anything?
Well, actually, the two traps they named, I was thinking about those. So, if I may briefly speak on those two, dealing with the fatherless trap, a lot of men, people, I would say, but men especially, I've heard a song that the artist, he was saying that he was about to open up a door and go into sin, whatever that was, because he didn't have that father figure in his life. And he felt like because he didn't have that father figure, he's going to go do this, open up this bad door, open this and that bad door. But he didn't, of course. But, you know, there is a power in having that father figure there. Now, it can be a biological father, an adoptive father, it can be a mentor or whatever, but that void that some men have is because of not having that father figure.
Mhm.
And also, you know, even not having God in as a father. A lot of people, they don't embrace, I say people don't embrace God because they're looking at him like, oh, he's a father. Oh, he's like their father, like, a bad one or whatever. They have a bad help me out here, the thought process dealing with it. They have the
Mhm.
false thought process, about God because of their own fathers. And even dealing with the emotions, um, like we were talking about earlier about, the suppression of the emotions. And you know it's not a good thing. And the other trap I thought about was the financial trap. And the reason why I say that is because sometimes people believe that, if oh, he doesn't make this amount of money, he's not a man. He doesn't do this job, he's not a man. He's not, or not a real man. I've heard that a lot, So it's a lot of false perceptions out there pertaining to, men, and whether they have this job or that job, it doesn't matter. But I'm not saying go out there and do the bad stuff
Hmm.
for money, but those who are really out there trying, they're trying to provide not only for themselves, but if they have children, if they have their wife, their family, whatever it is. But I thought that you know that was the one I thought about too.
Yeah, when you mentioned fathers, it reminded me of a YouTube short I saw recently where I think a football player kind of intertwined where he was off the team. He left one team and then he was going to transfer to another university where he would be eligible immediately. And coach, because he was a highly touted football player at his previous school, the football player at a lower level school was basically football coach told him that you come here, you can do whatever you want. And then he was thinking like, if he goes there and this guy basically paraphrasing, if this guy is basically saying he can do whatever he wants, then how is he going to become the best version of himself or the best player or whatever? If this guy's like, oh, you're so good, you can, stay out as long as you want, you can miss practice, just paraphrasing, but basically he left to go. He didn't go there because he realized that it would have been the worst decision for him, and it kind of reminded me of like the fatherless, where if there's no guidance, if someone just basically subsidizes or just encourages someone to just be free and do whatever you want and whatever, then some people they will take that, run with it, and just burn their own world down in the process. And other person will be like, it's not good for me. And that's the thing with like parenting and everything else where it's something where kids will know if they're being lied to, and if their heads are on, their shoulders straight and all that stuff, they're just going to reject that bad advice and counsel and just be like, I'm not going to do that. And he didn't go there, and he made the right decision not to go there because he probably wouldn't have gotten to the NFL and had the success that he had. So do you, based on the traps, if you just had to choose like word internal, external, which one do you think would, or what issue do you see with like men that you all interact with, friends or even co-workers or what relatives, whatever? So internal or external issues.
Internal. I see more internal.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the things start with internal, because like if you can handle it internally, then it's both gonna be internal and external. Because now you're physically portraying it,
Mhm.
and you're also emotionally portraying it.
That's
And
right.
they internal. They sit in it. They sit in it. They don't speak on it. So most of it they're sitting in it's internal. I see more internal than external.
And that's what I was going to say as well, internal, and then it may be expressed externally.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
So the internal, like the first trap was the isolation trap. So when it comes to men, I I think a lot of like I think you all mentioned that a lot of men do suffer alone in isolation again, like when it comes to the emotions and bottling things up. So do you think that part of it is like with society where like in the past I would say men they had like a rites of passage where there was like even other cultures and countries where there's like a trial or a age, whether it's 13 or 10 or whatever, where there's a moment where they can say they entered as a boy and then walked out as a man. And so there was like a rites of passage, and or there was, or even now there's not a whole lot of male spaces, there's a lot of female spaces where, we can have female only or female majority or girls night out, ladies night out. So I think there's a lot of missing outside of sports. I would say there's not a whole lot of opportunities or things where men just come together and just unite. I mean, of course, like with military and everything, but there's not a whole lot of places where men will just come together, like, oh, let's have a guys' night or let's do this, or because I think that if people, because of course, because of society, people may think, oh, you're trying to exclude women, or you're trying to, or can these guys, what are they going to do when they get together? Are they just going to get drunk or do something silly or stupid? So when it comes to like men suffering in silence or in isolation, what are y'all's thoughts about like silence and isolation in like male spaces, and how, or rites of passage, or how that ties into like the formation or the lack of developing a masculine identity?
I feel like a lot of them like the comprehension or understanding of number one, brothership. Because yes, you could be going through something, you feel like you're alone, but as long, well, brothership and comfortability. Because it's a lot of friends that you have around your age at a younger age that you can easily talk to, like how you play the game with them, and you can have a great conversation about the game. You can also use that time to like express feelings that you be having. You feel me? And I feel like a lot of them, a lot like from what I've seen, as well as they're not comfortable with expressing that. A lot of that comes from isolation in the family. So they feel like if you can't express that in the family, how can you express that with a friend? You feel me? Because they sometimes they do say blood is thicker than water, but sometimes mud is thicker than blood. If you ever heard that saying,
Yeah.
you feel me? But
Hmm.
it's like they have to understand that brotherhood is also a thing. And just once they understand that, it's a lot that you can openly express to the people that be in your circle a lot.
Yeah, and when you mention the blood and the water and the mud, it's a saying, not that specific saying, but when it comes, I like to make a place of mantis and make a clear distinction between family and relatives. Like I like to say that family is a choice, relatives are not. So when it comes to like blood relatives, that's not really a choice. So when I say family is a choice, like if a man and woman come together, have a family, they're not blood relatives. They came together and formed a family
Mm-hmm.
by choice. And so even like we could have friends who are like family, or and other people who are like family. That's a choice. There was a were friends, decided to become friends, and then continue that relationship, and it formed into like a family relationship. And so with relatives, it's just like their blood. Their blood is like it's not a choice. So I like to make that distinction. So like you said, people say blood is thicker than water, but family is a choice. Just because you're blood related to somebody does not make them family or a family member. So that's when it comes to like when I want to play semantics about that. So, um, Shar, with anything about the male places or isolation and silence?
There's really not a lot of, not that I've heard of, a lot of places where men can go to connect with each other, build friendships, brotherhoods, whatever it is. Now, it can be done in different ways, of course, like through the games. Let's just say they play sports together. Sometimes there's neighborhood leagues and stuff, and that forms that brotherhood or friendship or whatever. But it's like if they don't have that, then yeah, there could be isolation. Because let's say the man, he goes to work, he had a rough day at work. He goes home. What's at home? What is he dealing with at home? Whether it's wife, kids, or what, just whatever. Even if he's by himself, and then where's that escape? Now, there may be the problems, like just say bills or whatever it may be, but where's an escape? And a lot of men, they may escape and play the video game. And then, is it a problem? You're always on the game. You're doing this, you're doing that. You're always on the game. When are you going to spend time with me? When are you going to spend time with the kids? When are you going to do this? So I think because of the lack of options, I would say, in building the brotherhood and everything, that allows that isolation to start to form. Or they may go out and do something, but yeah.
Okay, I totally understand because I mean that's why I know even men and even women, I think, where a lot of people they'll say like once they're outside of the college university age, they're like, how or where am I going to find or make friends? Because if you're in school, university, military, whatever, you're surrounded by people, a lot of people. But once that winds down for like if you're college, university, mid 20s or whatever, like you're no longer surrounded or in a bubble by thousands of people, or even at a high school around thousands of people. Basically, it's like, okay, am I working? Are my friends just limited to just who I'm working with or whatever? And yeah, so it does matter about not just about the college, university. It can also be the city region you're in, and so if you're in a place where it's a lower population, you may have limited opportunities to meet people, and it's that's why I think people, once they reach different ages and thresholds, they need to, whatever their hobbies and interests are, get into things that find those types of people, find groups where you can get in touch with people who have those same interests and hobbies. But yeah, did Reginique, you had something you want to add?
Yes, you was talking about like um dealing with like the like colleges and the age groups. And when I was looking at the age groups, when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I see that even with the friends, because we talking about silence and isolation, even with friends, men are not as trustworthy as women when it comes to voicing like what they go through and things like that. That going back on the escape of or where to release. And it's like even if you have friends or certain things or whatever, you still don't have that kind of backing up what Israel said. You still don't have that comfortableness as a man. I don't see a lot of comfortableness in speaking on what they're going through. Like um, they just don't feel comfortable expressing the things that they go because they feel they're gonna get judged. The society judges men, like we were saying, going back to what we've been talking about. They judge men, and men just don't feel like they don't want their business going somewhere else. Say if they go and they confide in somebody, they're gonna be more on, am I gonna hear it again? Or and then all men have different friend groups. I see more men like getting together and just on a friendly basis, but not on a personal level, like a deep personal conversation on what's going on in their lives. I don't see a lot of men expressing that to another male. But as women, we do. But as men, I don't see men do that. I even experiencing like dealing with younger teenagers and going into adulthood, like the ones that's like going in from the 16, 17, 18. I don't, I see a lot of young boys, they kind of like isolate themselves. They're not expressing how they feel or whatever. They're bottling it up. So from a woman looking into a man perspective, I see a lot of men just they're not escaping with the talking or whatever because of more of the judging.
And for the women, ladies, how does this how does it affect y'all when it comes to like relationships or trying to build friendships or even relationships with men when it comes to the silence and isolation? So how does it affect you or how you may view somebody?
Well, I believe it's difficult. It's difficult to establish friendship, and then, if it becomes a relationship, dating relationship, or whatever is difficult, or if it's trying to get there. But just even as friends, sometimes, yeah, yeah, yeah. This,
As a woman myself, I got you, sis. As a woman myself, I believe like it's like it makes it hard to like even move on. It's kind of hard to move on with a man when it comes to that because it's like kind of like holding in a secret because I'm more of an open person. Like I'm going to express how I feel. I'm going to express what's going on. I'm more open. So if I had somebody that's kind of like closed up and bottled up, it's kind of like a standoffish. It's kind of standoffish to me because it's like, okay, if you can't, we supposed to be able to discuss this together, or even if it's a friend, like we should be able to discuss it because I'm not going to judge or whatever. I could pray for you. If you're not going to open up to me, I can't, I will help you out. But I feel like it's an open communication. When it's open communication, you get to the bottom of stuff. When you're holding it in, you can never get to the end of it. Like you can't find out what the problem is. Sometimes even speaking it out heals you. Like so, if you're sitting there holding it in, like when do you have this out? When you start bringing the output out and feeling better, you're not going to ever do that. It's going to make it cause a problem within the relationship or the friendship because both ways. It's not going to make it easy to be close to you.
I agree because I don't get how you try to solve something without actually mentally or even internally or externally addressing that issue. So you have a problem and all you're doing is just thinking about it. Okay, what are you actually doing to resolve it? It becomes a never ending problem. Easy.
Honestly, from like I realized through like the growth of past relationships and even friendships, I realized like if you're talking to somebody and something isn't really sitting well with you, like it could be something from the past or something that you're thinking about currently, is it's okay to open up and express that to somebody, but which a lot of people don't do because I have problems doing it. You feel me? But I feel like if I would have opened up and expressed it, that female mindset or perspective could have helped me understand more of what I was going through than just me trying to go through it by myself.
Makes sense. So at what point do you all think that awareness becomes action? Like, okay, people, they could be aware of something, but like, we can have, I'm sure we all have numerous examples in our lives and in other people's lives where they're aware that there's a problem. They are aware, but why do you all think that there's a disconnect between awareness and action, or at what point do you think awareness becomes action?
Is when they want it, like when they genuinely want the situation to change. Like a lot of people can be like, all right, I want this to bypass or go over. But sometimes you could just be saying it instead of wanting to actually fix that portion of yourself. You can acknowledge it, but it's after you feel like, yes, I want to fix this part so I can then grow past the situation. It's a lot of just understanding your own growth.
When it get too heavy.
Too heavy to carry.
When it's too heavy to carry. That's all I come here with. When it's too heavy to carry, I feel like that's when it become action because it's like, okay, what do I do to make this situation better? What do I do where I'm not carrying all this over my head like all day? This is on my mind. What do I do? Do I keep sitting in it? Do I keep dwelling in it? Do I keep crying in it? No, I gotta express it. The moment I express it, somebody can help me. But if I don't say it, who can help? I mean, God can help me, but if you're just sitting here and you still not asking for help, God ain't help you. You got to say it, and keeping it bottled in is the problem.
Yeah, you know how some people say God helps those who help themselves. So does that mean God don't help babies because they can't talk and they can't? So it's like you guys need to stop. And Shar, before I get to you, it also made me think that somebody could have like a physical ailment and they're aware of it, but they're not taking any action, and there's many reasons why, but one reason why it could be that they're just so used to it. It's become like a part of them. And some people might just fear like, oh, I know what life is. I know how life feels with pain and suffering, but they don't have a clue what it means to actually live. And so they get so used and attached to this issue where they could be afraid to be like, I don't even know what this is, a completely foreign issue. I don't, or feeling where I have no clue what life is or how it feels like without this problem or issue. And so if someone is causing a problem or issue in someone's life, they're aware of the issue, but it could be like, I don't know what is it going to be, what how is life going to be without that problem or issue, even though they want to get rid of it. And I think there's many reasons why people stay in bad relationships, but I think one small reason could be like, okay, they're so used to it, and the longer or the deeper they get into it, the harder it can be. It can feel like to leave for them to leave, and then it's like, oh, I'm so used to this that I don't want to. It's better even with guys where they may think that failure or starting over, which digs into different traps. They can dig into the pride trap or the identity trap, where a guy's like, he would rather, if another man saw that he had to start over, the guy's so caught up in like, or a comparison trap. He's so caught up in like, he's worried about what other people think, when like you could just start over and stop worrying about other people. But if you're so used to failure or this issue or problem, it's like, okay, uh, I want it gone, but it's become like glued or such embedded within me where like if someone had something embedded in them, you got to take out some of the good that's in them to carve it out. Where they feel like, oh, if this issue is gone, is a part of me going to be missing the good and the bad? And so they're like, oh, since removing this bad may take out something good in the process, even though the bad outweighs the good, let's just leave the bad in there because a part of the good is going to be gone too. And so, like with relationships, I mean, if good and bad, if the bad outweighs the good, they're like, oh, I'm gonna lose all the bad, but there's that good that they still have. I'm gonna lose that too. It's like, well, you're aware, but when are you gonna make action? Sure.
And to piggyback off of what you were saying, a lot of that is based off of the toxic nature of things. People are accustomed to the toxic things, and that's what, if they're accustomed to it, it's going to be hard to let go. Or they may have fear of letting go. Fear
Mm-hmm.
of, oh, well, what's going to happen if I let this go or that go? And I believe you said that. But I also, going back to your question, like Reggie was talking about the heaviness of things, some people, I'm going to say people, don't realize things until it's too late. You know, that's when the change, they want to make a change once it's too late. Even if it's a relationship, the person may have moved on. Oh, now it's too late because the other one has moved on. Now I want to make the change because, I see that they left or whatever it is. And so that's what I believe. That's when the awakening comes. Sometimes it's sad, you know, it's too late. But
So, what does rebuilding look like to y'all? So, based on what we've discussed, like, what does it, what does rebuilding look to y'all based on like what we've discussed? So, if somebody's in a trap or silence or isolation or apathy or any of the traps are just tying everything together, like, what does rebuilding look like? You had to picture like what does rebuilding look like?
well, I believe it starts with recognizing it, acknowledging what the situation is, what the trap is, that the man is dealing with, and to start rebuilding it, it will start with, you know, one prayer, praying, ask God to help. God help me to, change my mindset, change my heart, you know, um, things like that. And I think when a person is ready for that change, they're like, okay. let me make the steps I need to take. Let me take those steps to make the change, so it won't be just looking out at everybody else, but looking at myself. So yes.
Reggie, easy.
Being willing to change. Back to what Shanice said, being willing to change. Like you gotta have it in your heart. It's time to change. Kind of like it's just when you need to change, and it's like you came into agreement. Like it's time. So you got to be willing. If you're not willing to change, rebuilding has to start from you willing to do something different.
Easy.
Replacing the bad puzzle pieces. Like you could think of it as a picture. Everything has a bigger picture to it. Like your life, if you know the right area you're supposed to be going, and there is a wrong color in this scenery, you have to change out the puzzle piece. You have to find the right match. You have to figure out what it is that you need to do and how to acquire that new piece to fit into your frame.
I agree. That's what I agree with, and I think it's just people. It becomes easier to just play the victim role, or to, well, it's me, or just, or even just people like, oh, if I don't make it out or someone else made it out, it's like that kind of ties into apathy, where some people may just try and try and try, and they feel like they haven't gotten anywhere, and then they're just like, why try anymore? So it all ties into the trap, and what Charnice was mentioning about, like, even with prayer and like the spiritual or existential trap. I mean, when that we're gonna have a very deep dive into that, where like people misunderstand or confuse spirituality versus religion, and even like with existentialism, like what people may feel like or question, like, why am I here? What is my purpose? Like, what is their existence? And then when people don't have that internal compass or that internal guide, then they could just turn to nihilism, where like nothing matters, and just have a toxic mindset about a lot of things. But thank you all for joining me and answering these questions. And so, as I'll say in this episode 1, the prelude, I will say that you didn't choose a trunk, but you are responsible for what grows next. And the next episode will be about the public domain, the invisible world that is shaping men. Until next time, take care and see you again.
Masculinity trap, wake up from the slumber and never look back. Masculinity trap, rise from the ruins and break every trap. Masculinity trap, wake up from the slumber, break the back doors crack. Masculinity trap, stand up from the floor and take your future back. Take your future back, take your future back. Isolation got you talking to shadows. Apathy got you tired of trying. Emotion got you breaking the silence. And spirit got you existing, not living in violence. Pleasure got you willing to sin. In comparison, got you wanting to be another man. Yes, another man. Yeah, okay, misdirection from the economy got you questioning yourself, fleeing from your identity. And it really got you moving in pride instead of following God and worshiping His signs. And the lack of your competence really shows without God you are fatherless. Break from the past and masculinity traps. Give your heart to God and get your future back.